Hello everyone. There have been a lot of posts from newer players asking general questions about how to construct decks in Steel Division 2. I have attempted to provide a rough abstract overview of how to put together a deck. It's a bit long. I do not cover division-specific aspects. The intention is to get people to think about why to take things and not what to take specifically. Deck building in Steel Division 2 is a bit overwhelming initially. The good news is some general concepts can be applied to create a starting point. Some folks find endless entertainment in tweaking and refining decks in Eugen games, and others just want to take their battle group to the field ASAP. I want to provide a general thought process to create a functional deck regardless of division choice or intimate knowledge of units. Divisions vary a lot in how they go about performing basic functions and needs. They excel at different things and inversely lack at others. Ensuring your battle group can perform all basic functions is the most important aspect. Of secondary importance is leveraging your division's strengths to gain the initiative and gain tactical advantages on the field. Let's first look at the basic functions a battle group needs to be able to perform, holding a front line. Line infantry are the core of every single division. Steel Division 2 ultimately comes down to holding territory. Line infantry are the basic unit that hold territory. They are cheap, disposable, versatile, and durable in the right conditions. They can range from cheap, weak, and bad at direct combat like Ersatztruppen to versatile combat units capable of killing any ground unit in theory, like PNZ, Grenadier with Panzerfausts and Strelki, DP. Weaker units will rely more heavily on support, but all infantry want some degree of support. Generally speaking, more MGS in the squad means better performance at range. Bolt-action rifles are easily the weakest equipment and can essentially be ignored in selection. Squads with just bolts should be seen as just meat shields. Semi-auto rifles are probably stronger than one would expect. Anti-tank weaponry adds a lot of versatility for a modest upcharge. A couple SMGs are usually inadequate to win close-range fights against specialists, but a frag or TNT can really do a lot for a line. Infantry squad. Every battle group needs to field enough basic infantry in every phase to hold a front line and cover supporting units. How many cards depends on the division, but generally a bare minimum is 2 cards A, 1 B, 1 C, or a second in B. Some divisions have very limited infantry tab slots, making this rule hard to cement. They have to make tough choices between line infantry, specialists, and leadership. Close quarters combat. Many capture points in Steel Division 2 are towns and forest. These terrain types involve close ranges, often 100m, 300m, due to line of sight being limited or blocked. Every battle group will need at least some ability to contest these locations. The simplest solution is to use CQB specialist infantry squads. These range from line infantry with hand grenades to SMG-wielding assault squads, and even flamethrower and TNT or satchel charge toting teams. They all work a little differently to fill the same role. Take what you like. Additionally, close combat specialists can come in the form of certain vehicles. Half-tracks and certain tanks can support a push through a city or light forest. Usually you want cheap or specialized vehicles for this task, like half-tracks and light armor with multiple MGS, flamethrowers, assault guns, or very high armor. Crocodiles, autocannons, and AVREs are the flagship examples here. These close quarters vehicles can't safely replace infantry in close range combat, however. Always support them. Heavy forests are truly for CQB infantry, as vehicles cannot enter. Generally, any phase you intend to take ground in, you will need some form of CQB specialists. They are less necessary for defensive use, but if you can fit them into your deck, some availability in every phase is useful. You can sometimes work around CQB specialists pushing forests or cities with line infantry and heavy suppression if necessary. Anti-armor: every battle group has to be able to answer to enemy armored vehicles. They come in many varieties. Spread out armor in an infantry support role: this is the simplest use of armor and the easiest to answer to. Every single division can field some form of light to heavy armor in sporadic positions to assist their infantry, and force one to bring assets to counter. Usually half-tracks, light, and medium tanks fill this role. Countering this requires relatively affordable or versatile capabilities. Line infantry with weapons, light to medium heavy dedicated at guns, armor of your own, or whatever else. The key is having enough availability to cover the front line as needed, and to do so without investing more than the enemy. Concentrated armor formations, armor, especially tanks, are available in large quantities in Steel Division 2 to many divisions. A common tactic from players and AI alike is to mass armor together to increase survivability and lethality. These armor concentrations are good at affecting breakthroughs and can be hard to deal with. Every division should have some tools on hand to at least blunt the effectiveness of this tactic. Massing your own armor and/or guns will be necessary on some level, but controlling their armor's effectiveness is equally important. Smoke can let you dictate the range the enemy armor engages you at, or let you protect key units from the armor. Heavy fire support, especially rocket artillery, heavy bombers, aircraft, and off-map barrages can be used too. Heavy armor: select divisions can field truly heavy armor that can't be killed frontally by most weaponry. These units are often used as anchors to lock down a supported position or spearhead a push. Some divisions are lucky enough to have weaponry that can kill these vehicles frontally at distance, but this is an exception. Don't overreact to a stationary anchor heavy, but at the same time prepare to deal with them. Usually a way to panic a heavy into a retreat and following up with a side or rear armor shot is the most cost-effective kill. Ambushes at close range are wonderful answers, but don't expect enemies to fall into this trap. Rushing down heavies with even light tanks can kill them, as penetration values increase as distance decreases. Summit planes can get kills on heavies. Think about what tools your division offers and what your overall strategy for a match is. This will determine how you will deal with heavy armor. Ultimately, anti-armor is the most complex basic function to fulfill for most divisions. If you are prepared to deal with the above, you have a safe starting place and can refine your tactics with experience. It is too difficult to provide a general rule on availability minimums here. Maintaining vision: in Steel Division, having a vision advantage, or at least parity, goes a long way to getting the full potential out of your units. Getting the first shot in is extremely valuable, not just for a potential kill, but misses generate suppression, which swings the odds of an engagement in your favor. Additionally, the more a player actually sees of the battlefield, the better they can react and plan. Infantry will provide decent vision on their own if you maintain a good spread along the front, but recon units offer significantly better odds of giving you first shot advantage and better information. Have enough recon infantry for A and B at least. I consider the minimum workable as 4 in A and 6 in B. Activation slot efficiency by picking recon transport vehicles for these is often wise, as it doubles the recon units per card at a good price. Additionally, if one plans on aggressive mechanized play like a tank push, then strongly consider a form of dedicated vehicle recon. 5. Contest the air game. Not every division needs to control the air, but every battle group must be able to contest it enough to deny the enemy total control. Unless your division's strength lies in its air support, merely denying the enemy its key air assets is enough. Anti-air units will be the foundation of this task for most battle groups. Higher caliber guns are better at scoring kills generally, while smaller calibers provide quick and reliable suppression generally. Keep in mind, unarmored vehicle AA is the most vulnerable classification, as a mere fighter strafing run can actually kill them in one go potentially. Towed batteries are more survivable and cheaper, but less mobile and vulnerable to counter battery. Bringing in enough AA to suppress fairly quickly, but not necessarily kill, is usually the most cost-efficient. Any enemy aircraft you need to kill is usually best suppressed by AA and finished by a fighter aircraft. Hopefully your AA network can cover your fighters to net the kill and successfully evac. It's often a good trade to sacrifice a fighter for a kill on a key support aircraft. If your division has very high caliber AA like 80+ mm or even 40 mm, then it becomes reasonable to mix these in with low caliber guns to fish for lucky kills. Just don't expect 100% kill rates this way. There is a big difference in commitment between contesting the air and achieving air superiority. Determine which your battle group is going for and build accordingly. Always bring at least a couple AA cards and fighter cards. How much more depends on your strategy. Playing it safe, if you at all can, saves potential frustration. Infantry support. Leaving infantry to fight your war by themselves is rarely ideal. Steel Division is all about combined arms. Infantry are the core of every division, but infantry support is what wins fights. This encompasses everything from half-tracks to heavy armor and MG squads to howitzers and close air support. The choices here depend heavily on division choice and overall strategy. The tank and artillery tabs will usually be the primary source of infantry support, and the support tab and air tab usually the secondary source. Additionally, the recon tab can range from having nothing to contribute to having some amazing cost-efficient options. Usually, due to total activation points and divisional variations, you will need to pick a few tabs to focus on and supplement with the others. Some form of armored vehicle support is near mandatory for every division. Even infantry divisions badly want some form of supporting vehicles to spread along key locations of the front to assist their other units. They help gain initiative locally and make it easier to trade cost efficiently in the area. Mechanized and tank divisions will likely commit much more heavily to these vehicles. Some form of indirect fire support is also near mandatory for everyone, whether that be artillery or air support. Air requires potentially heavy commitment, or it can be completely shut down, so keep that in mind. Consider what your division's strengths are when it comes to infantry support and what your strategy for the game is, and select accordingly. Bringing some smoke support is almost always wise. Dictating when and at what ranges engagements take place has high tactical value. Mortars deliver the fastest and most reactive form. Some infantry have limited organic smoke ability, and howitzers can provide smoke anywhere but may need time or numbers to do so adequately. Even with no interest in using artillery for suppression or damage, consider bringing some just for smoke support. It is worth the practice and effort. Artillery ranges in role from infantry support to win condition along with some secondary functions. I am lumping it in here for now. I will try to cover the basic roles and what pieces best fulfill them generally. A. Mortars, smoke support and quick reactive localized suppression. 60 to 120 mm mortars are low commitment and versatile. Ideal for supporting specific areas by suppressing specific targets and covering advances and retreats by smoke. If a build-up of indirect firepower isn't a key aspect of your strategy, these are excellent. Half-track versions offer mobility and resistance to counter-battery for a premium. Don't expect many kills under 120 mm. They are to help neutralize specific threats temporarily. Howitzers, these come in towed and self-propelled varieties. Towed being most vulnerable of all RT to counter-battery due to low speed. They can provide fire support at effectively any range. The smoke-toting varieties can alleviate need for mortars potentially. These guns are able to counter-battery well. Corrected shot versions with radios become fairly reliable at hitting specific targets instead of area saturation. Generally require more investment than other forms of artillery to achieve reliable effect, but a critical mass becomes a cost-efficient long-term asset. High-caliber versions become quite good at suppressing even heavy armor. Rocket artillery, reusable on-demand mass suppression. These eat tons of supply. Very good to stop a push or soften an area to push into. Very powerful tools that can net kills when lucky or the enemy bunches up, but the whole point is intense suppression. A true enabler unit. Off-map artillery observers. These do largely what rocket artillery does, but in a disposable format. Where rocket artillery requires a supply truck every volley or 3, these are buy, fire, forget for the most part. Can save activation slots and long-term investment in exchange for limited uses. Their power largely depends on caliber. A decent rule of thumb is less than 170 mm is incomplete or not entirely reliable suppression, especially against armor, and above 200 mm becomes reliable against armor. Very high caliber versions can net some devastating results even against armor. Choosing artillery depends entirely on how much investment you are willing to make and the roles you want to cover. If available, some form of smoke and some form of heavy on-demand suppression is wise. Counter-battery, or at least resistance to counter-batter, is important if you will be investing more heavily. Artillery choices should change if you are tailoring the battle group for larger team games, as there is more opportunity to build up artillery, and also greater counter-battery risk. The infantry support role often falls into another role which I will refer to as win condition. Use the recon, tank, support, air, and artillery tabs to cover basic needs first, and the extra activation points and slots can be used to build towards your win condition. Steel Division 2 has 2 intertwined mechanics to provide advantages to units. Leadership and veterancy. Units with veterancy gain modest advantages over counterparts without. Veterancy can be innate or provided with leader units and/or commander units. Leaders provide veterancy in a radius around them while also providing morale and preventing surrender. Especially useful for keeping disheartened units in line. Commanders give an additional tier of veterancy over leaders to units in their large radius. They can chain this bonus through multiple leaders too. Leadership is a great way to get extra value out of key units or help a contested front hold its ground. All decks really should utilize leaders to provide veterancy to some degree. Decks utilizing armor will want enough to support their concentrations or key heavies, while infantry-focused decks will want some to leaders to support pushes in cities or forests and to help hold the lines. The question of availability will come down to preference and how long they can be kept alive. Use of commanders is a personal choice. Keeping one alive through a key armored push can massively increase its potential among other uses. They are priority targets for the enemy for a reason though. Win condition. This concept refers to utilizing a division's strength to gain initiative, trade cost efficiently, force reactions, and effect breakthroughs or advances. Generally, every division has a couple tabs with very good or expansive options and availability. Once all basic needs are met, remaining activation points and slots are used on these strong points. Tank divisions will utilize heavy tanks and/or massed mediums with supporting assets to rule open ground, or rush down the opposition with a spearhead. Mechanized will use a versatile selection to maximize combined arms efficiency. Infantry divisions will build up a devastating amount of supporting artillery or air support while dominating close quarters engagements and grinding down the enemy's infantry reserves. All generally speaking, of course. Some division will have a real choices to make here in how they specialize. This part is very open-ended depending on division, so pick a focus plan because your bases should be covered by this point. The other aspects to consider are income distribution, total availability versus veterancy, game mode, and team size. Income distribution. There are 4 options that all favor different strategic approaches. This choice does depend a good deal on what format you play. 1v1 will favor gaining early advantages more so than larger team games. Breakthrough defense will also often favor a strong start. More players generally means longer games with higher total attrition, so keep this in mind when choosing. Vanguard offers a strong opening phase which should then be leveraged into a maintained advantage as the game goes on. It doesn't fall off too hard if the game goes long. This is a popular choice in the community at the moment. Really solid option for 1v1 and 2v2. Just be sure to utilize your early advantages. Vanguard is a more aggressive generalist. Maverick is as close as Steel Division 2 gets to a timing attack or all in. By the end of B phase you will have a hefty income lead over the slower options, and a modest total income advantage over Vanguard. Maverick requires a strategy and deck composition to utilize it because the falloff in Phase C will become noticeable as the game drags. Taking extra veterancy on key units in A and especially B phases can pay off here more than anywhere else in theory. Take initiative, secure a lead, and force the enemy to make big plays later on. Maverick can be dangerous in large team games, as if it goes on too long the falloff is extreme. Maverick is the ultimate aggressive choice. Balanced is similar to Vanguard, but slower. Its biggest advantage is never being too disadvantaged in any phase of any matchup. In exchange, it doesn't excel as hard as other income distributions. This is a very reliable pick. If you don't know what to take, then Balanced is a good start. Balanced is a more defensive generalist approach. Juggernaut is all about the long game. It's going to usually be heavily disadvantaged in A and B, but will start to pull ahead if it can survive long enough. A very dangerous pick in 1v1 and 2v2. Higher player counts swing the ease of use into a more favorable light. Have a reason to take Juggernaut. Juggernaut is a slow option before it can build up a hopefully insurmountable late offensive. Player count, Steel Division is largely balanced towards 1v1 and 2v2, but still can play well in higher counts on proper-sized maps. 10v10 is a different beast altogether and should be seen as an arcade mode and approached as such. In terms of deck building, keep in mind more players trends towards longer games with higher attrition. It tends to become easier to build up supporting assets as less frontline has to be covered by each player. Building critical masses of certain units becomes easier and thus more valuable. Be sure to account for needing higher availability of basics like infantry and AT, while also being able to concentrate your win condition. Artillery and air along with heavy armor tend to have higher value as player count increases. Veterancy in exchange for availability tends to become a worse proposition. Game mode, the standard format in Steel Division 2 is Eastern Front. This is the standard skirmish with each side spawning all initial and reinforcement units near their respective edges of the map. The biggest impact is need for fast initial units to claim key positions as far ahead as possible. Choosing fast transports and infantry support vehicles for the opening, and for quick reinforcements in Phase A while few units exist, provides some real tactical advantages. Phase B and C become more conducive to armored transports or support vehicle transports that are usually slower. This doesn't mean they are bad for Phase A, but be aware of what starting units are available to you as it affects the opening a lot. Defense and close combat modes somewhat alleviate the need for strictly fast opening units, and you can place slow units far forward before the start. Something to remember. Similarly, breakthrough attack means the opposition will start with units potentially on the vast majority of the map, so slower armored transports and infantry support vehicles can get their value potentially immediately. Veterancy versus availability. Almost all cards offer increasing levels of veterancy for fewer available units. Additionally, each phase offers more units per card than the previous. Veterancy provides modest improvements to basic unit traits, most notably being accuracy, reload speed, and resistance to suppression. Units that really want to land their first shot should strongly consider trading for veterancy. Examples are tank destroyers, especially high-end ones, and at rocket aircraft. Any unit that gets only one safe chance to attack before it should retreat or risk a trade can gain a lot from some veterancy. Certain specialist units or high-cost units also come to mind. On the other hand, some units gain very little from veterancy, such as low-end line infantry and artillery. Decks going for a long game will be less willing to trade availability for veterancy, while highly aggressive decks may want a bit more veterancy. It is completely safe to start with minimal veterancy for your decks and adjust it as you go. Tailoring battle groups for the specific modes you enjoy can provide tactical and strategic advantages, so feel free to utilize this aspect of deck building. Conclusion, I sincerely hope this isn't too abstract to be useful. It covers only the basic concepts and ignores division specifics, which is an important aspect. My intention is to help newer players think critically about why they take what they take rather than tell people what to take.